So recording has started, so we can move.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Wherever you're joining us from, you are highly welcome. I am Dumi Charlotte Aya, a researcher at eBase Africa, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar of today. So before we carry on, here are some few pointers to enable us make the most of our time. We shall indeed have the comment section open, but please, if you have any questions as the conversation unfolds, kindly use the chat to drop your questions. We shall revisit the questions a few minutes to the end of our conversation with our guest for the day. So for those who might not know, just a quick one about eBase and the work that we do. eBase Africa is an international charity registered in Cameroon working to meet or make basic services more effective by ensuring best available research, evidence is applied in service delivery. So we operate across the evidence ecosystem, basically, that is ranging from evidence implementation, primary research, evidence synthesis, evidence translation, and of course, evidence implementation. And our interventions are focused around education, health, and generally just looking at how we can use evidence to improve on livelihoods. Now, this webinar is on EdTech Connect, that is Bridging Innovation and Experience. It's part of the Education in Daba 2025 pre-conference. So by the end of this month, some of you here will be part of it. That's precisely from the 31st of March to the 2nd of April. eBase Africa will be hosting the biggest convergence of educational stakeholders from Cameroon and beyond in the city of Limbe, Cameroon. So as such, as a prelude to this gigantic event, we have been hosting a series of webinars with diverse educational stakeholders who are making a difference across the continent. So our speaker for today is an inspiring trailblazer for women and girls in STEM, who has brought a lot of innovation to the educational landscape in Africa. Speaking of no other person, but Faraja Kotanya-Landu. She is the founder and CEO of Surely Direct, a leading social enterprise providing curriculum-aligned content and tech-driven solutions to students, teachers, parents, and schools across Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. With extensive experience implementing EdTech and AI solutions, Faraja will be sharing Surely Direct's journey, impact, and lessons learned thus far. Faraja, you are highly welcome, and we are really glad to have you on board.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm sure the series has been quite insightful. So I'm quite honored and ready to speak and ready to share insights from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Faraja. And equally, just to mention, we were supposed to have this webinar sometime last month. However, due to circumstances beyond our control, we had to carry it forward. That is why we are here today. So thank you to everyone staying on course and joining us today. And it's important that we get to know the objectives of this conversation. Firstly, it is an opportunity for us to facilitate a thought-provoking platform for high-level dialogue on AI and EdTech in education. It's equal an opportunity for us for Surely Direct to learn from Surely Direct's experience and impact in addressing educational challenges in East Africa. We equally aim at inspiring educators, policymakers, researchers, funders, and young innovators to think critically and about sustainable EdTech solutions. And of course, we are looking at providing practical insights and actionable takeaways for our wonderful participants. So without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Faraja, my first question to you is, why Surely Direct? Why did you start Surely Direct? What specific challenges in education did you aim at addressing through technology?
Thank you, Charlotte. And yes, I mean, we are all here because we believe that the right to quality education is a fundamental human right. And when we are looking at education in 2013, that particular year, Tanzania had faced the worst secondary school examination results, where over 80% of students had failed. By failure, I mean they could not progress to higher learning, but also the 4 years where they had spent in secondary education had completely gone in vain. These students had failures by means of Division 0 and Division 4, which is the lowest categories of the classification of the grades, and they cannot get a secondary school certificate based on those grades. So literally 4 years down the drain. And there were so many challenges that were addressed. There was a special presidential commission looking into the education challenges and looking into how the country can actually come out of the situation to be able to actually build a better education system for the present generation, but also for the future. And despite many challenges being discussed, we really looked particularly into one challenge, which was access to educational resources. 2013 digital educational content is quite a premature idea, but we're looking at the trends of smartphone penetration. We're looking at connectivity growth rate. We're looking at how technology trends were rapidly transforming different other sectors. And we really wanted to consider having EdTech solutions to also to be able to bridge that gap of access to educational resources. So when we started, our main agenda was to leverage technology to be able to provide relevant and contextual educational content on web and mobile platforms for secondary school students. That has been the core mission, which has evolved to include now teachers, but also include primary school education. We still believe technology, if leveraged right, can support students and teachers to access educational resources, to access teaching support and teaching resources, to be able to bridge that educational gap, the educational resources gap, but to also have a companion. We look at technology as a companion to support learning journeys, to support learning experiences of students, despite their learning needs, despite their geographies, despite their financial difficulties, despite their socioeconomic status, and to be able to overcome those challenges through access to educational resources via digital technologies.
Just beautiful, Faraja. I think in a nutshell, you're all about equalizing the access to education. Really, really, really amazing the work that you are doing. So this takes me to my next question. From your intervention and from what I know about Surely Direct, you've been able to implement really innovative EdTech solutions across East Africa. So could you share perhaps a few examples of the impact the solutions have had on learning outcomes?
As I said in the beginning, our priority was actually looking at access to educational resources. And as you can imagine, 2013 technology wasn't as dynamic as it is now. It was still very low. But over the last 10 years, we've had close to 5 million students learning on our platforms. We have over 70,000 teachers registered on our platforms, accessing our teaching resources. We have schools that are connected on our learning management system. So when I say we have web and mobile platforms, we have a web platform, which is an e-learning platform available online at suredirect.co.tz. We also have a learning management system that we pre-install in schools and learning centers that can be accessed offline. So you do have a network of schools that are partners that we work with in training their teachers, but also in accessing our content through the learning management system. We also have applications for both primary and secondary school students where they can access national curriculum content and they can access revision content based on their needs and based on their learning pace and based on their personal aspirations. We also have a SMS platform in partnership with UNICEF here in Tanzania, where you can also access revision content. You can also access short lessons. You can access a virtual teacher, and you can access Wikipedia, among other life skills and extracurricular content. And so as much as we are focused on access, but we also wanted that access to actually improve learning outcomes. We just didn't want to provide access and not follow up. What is happening when a student learns on our platform, when a teacher accesses our teaching resources? So what we've seen, for example, it's a very interesting statistic, because in other countries, you find like a student will spend perhaps an average of 20 minutes, on average of 25 minutes on our learning platforms. At Shura Direct, our average user would spend at least 35 minutes on our learning platforms. That really shows a high retention rate. It shows that the content is really engaging and they have to stay on the platform. We've also seen over 45% improvement in their test scores in comparison to those who are not learning on our platforms. We've done cohort analysis studies where we've seen students coming into our platform, and we've been able to compare them from subject to subject, but from time to time, to be able to see improvement, not just in how they perform on our platforms, but also qualitatively following up on on how they perform in schools, in their test scores, also in the exams. And so we see, and of course, one of the biggest indicators for any education system is how well the students do in the exams. And so for us, test scores is quite important. But we've also seen other trends which we actually think are very good for the 21st century skills. When we go into a school and when we introduce our platforms to students, what you would observe very quickly, if you give a device to a student, whether it's a laptop, it's a tablet, it's a desktop, whatever smart device they have a hands on, you'll see them interacting with the content, but also interacting with each other. Something which we think is very important for collaboration skills, but also the discussion they hold is actually very, very important for creative thinking and for communication skills. We believe when they use these digital platforms, they also acquire digital skills. So it's not just about learning actual curriculum content, but they're also acquiring extra skills that are very relevant for a student, for a person in today's century. They need to have communication skills, they need to have collaborative skills, they need to have critical thinking skills, and they also need to have digital skills. So we also see these as, I would say, a by the way effect of actually leveraging and using technology to provide access to educational content. We also see different dynamics between teachers and students when you have technology in the room. Unlike when you have students learning traditionally, technology has actually improved teachers' understanding of students. They actually are able to engage more, and engaging more, they're also able to understand their behaviors. They're also able to understand their learning patterns, and they're also able to support them where they're needed. So they're able to contextualize and customize their support based on individual needs of the students or based on the classroom needs. When you look at learning outcomes, we usually tend to look at test scores, but I would encourage all of us, when you're looking at learning outcomes have become very vast. And of course, you have to narrow down on what is important to you. For us, fundamentally, it's still the test scores, the exam scores, but we're also very interested in these other outcomes that we think have a potential result in their progress, how they become active citizens, and how they become progressive citizens in their communities.
Just lovely. I think the work you are doing is quite impactful, Faraja, and I can totally relate because within the context of the AI Teachers Project, which eBase is collaborating with Shule Direct and Live for Ghana, you were able to build the teachers dashboard and the learners app that we're using within the context of this project. So I do believe that the work you are doing is really concretized on ground. And also, this actually leads me to my next question, Faraja. Within the context of this project, we had a lot of challenges that came up, infrastructural challenges, availability of gadgets, insufficiency of perhaps internet connectivity, supply, electricity, with the African realities that we have, and I'm sure you're quite conversant with. So my question is, what are the challenges that you are facing with scaling EdTech opportunities within the African continent or in your interventions? And how are you able to navigate these infrastructural challenges that are really an impediment to this kind of work?
Thank you. And I'm glad you've brought up AI because it's really a dear project of mine. It's my current favorite. And I feel like there's a lot that we have learned through the pilot, which we are going to build on those lessons as we progress into the future. And there's so many challenges, again, in the African context. But what I think is actually, so I'll start with scaling. And again, being an EdTech organization, and again, being focused on access, for us, numbers really matter. So people who have access to our platforms, people who are able to learn on our platforms, teachers who can access teaching content on our platforms, the numbers really matter. And so when you're looking at scale, there's two ways where you can consider scale. And I would actually like to touch on both. So one is scaling through the government education system, which means you have to scale through the school infrastructure, the school system that is existing in that particular country. And then the other alternative is to actually considering scale through individual users. So having a platform that exists online, people can subscribe to it, people can access the platform, people can register, and just individually, perhaps they have premium content they can pay for. And so we believe at Schule Direct, the school is the cornerstone of any education system. And for that reason, we really think that the best way to scale is scaling through a public education system where you're able to actually reach the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, the ones who tend to be left behind. And so scaling through an existing education system now comes with its own fair of challenges. That, as you said, we have infrastructure issues, we have connectivity. Sometimes the school may be able to perhaps support the students with internet connectivity, but then there just isn't network coverage within the area. And then you also find the cost of internet, the cost of devices, the cost of actually having that extra time for teachers to be able to support their students. And maybe we also come to the issue of human resources. Do we have teachers who are capable of supporting their students with digital skills, with actually integrating EdTech in their classroom, with knowing how to teach through technology? And then you come to the issue of again, just generally, do we have schools that are equipped and not just having a desktop, but also having security mechanisms, electricity, sources of power? So you have those, what I would call infrastructure issues, connectivity issues, human resources challenges, and then you come to the last one, which is a big hurdle, which is again touching on capacity, behaviors, and attitudes. Do we believe that students can actually learn via a digital platform? Do we believe teachers can support their students, can actually get data and be informed with that data, can analyze that data to be able to inform their teaching practices, their teaching strategies? And so you find that when you've overcome all those, the fundamental systemic challenges have been addressed, then you come to actual practice of EdTech integration in an African classroom. Given the context that we have, again, you still have biases among teachers, you still have biases among parents, and you also have students who perhaps need to have better support from their teachers, from their parents, which they may not have in the context that this is a very new approach, or it's a very new mechanism of learning, and perhaps we don't really have strong evidence, some people may say, or perhaps we don't really have the open-mindedness to be able to adopt it and integrate it into our lives. Technology is very much part of everything else, I would say, sports, entertainment, health, and it's making its strides in education. But so much more has to be done to prove concept. And our work is actually to inform those policies, to inform strategies, and importantly, to inform behaviors and attitudes with results that EdTech can actually support a student to do well in their classrooms.
Wow. And Fawaja, as you were speaking, I think I quickly wanted, there's something you mentioned about mindsets. And it just brings me to the question, like within with your experience and all the work that you have been doing, have you had, beyond the conventional challenges that we have spoken about, the systematic challenges which we all know of, have there been unexpected obstacles that you have encountered in you trying to introduce AI or technology to education, and how did you overcome these challenges?
So I would say my solution is always one. I would say show and tell. Show and tell means improving capacities in different ways. People have to see testimonies, to hear to see EdTech that has actually worked. People have to engage with EdTech. They have to play with it, work with it. When you look at AI, for example, with our project, we're looking at how teachers can be informed of their students' progress, their students' behaviors, and how they can use that data of their students' learning experiences to inform their teaching strategies, to be informed how they can teach better. And unless a teacher has lived through that, as we can explain until tomorrow, that, okay, this is the dashboard, your students, this is how they perform, this is how they're going to perform, this is how it's going to be, this is the data you'll get, this is how the data can support you to be able to now know which strategy to deploy in the classroom, which strategy to use to support your students. But unless that teacher has actually engaged with the platform, has actually engaged with the data, has been able to see the data analyzed, and the data pointing them to the right teaching strategy, and for them to take that teaching strategy, apply it in the classroom or apply it on a digital platform and see it working among their students, that teacher may never be converted. So I believe in show and tell. One, I also believe in building capacities. And building capacities, again, as I said earlier, we have biases, we have attitudes, we have perspectives which may be different to how we think EdTech can work and how EdTech has been working. And so building capacities is also narratives. It's also advocacy and communications work. It's also training these teachers. It's also supporting them and not just going to a school or having a platform, leaving it there, maybe having a one-off training, but without the ongoing support that any digital platform needs to have, sort of like a customer care support that you can go to and reference point where you can actually come back to be able to keep on improving your own experience of the use of the platform. And so I believe show and tell. I also believe building capacities, whether it's through advocacy and communications, whether it's through the technical trainings that we do in integrating EdTech into the classroom, whether it's through support after the introduction of the platforms, continuous support, continuous peer-to-peer support as well has worked really well. We've seen teachers who have become conversant faster than the other teachers, but playing a role of mentor teachers to others to be able to support them, to be able to show them how it can be done. And of course, the best teacher the best teacher for a teacher is another teacher. And so building that community of a peer-to-peer network is also very important to be able to ensure that the capacity is there, the skills are there, the attitudes are positive, but also we are building a community of practice between teachers and students.
I couldn't agree any more with the strategies you have in place, Faraja, and your entire team at Surely Direct. But permit me play devil's advocate for a minute. I think precisely what I'm keen on hearing is how, with the rise of AI and digital transformation, how do you maintain a balance between human-centered learning and technology-driven solutions? Because there are people, especially as your interventions or most of the interventions Surely Direct does is around early primary learners, and they are still, there are people who have the school of thought that exposing children, so to say, with gadgets at this very tender age is much more dangerous than it is beneficial. So I just want to know how you are able to strike this human-centered balance.
So first of all, Charlotte, yes, and I'm glad you've pointed that question. I've been seeing, I think now EdTech is getting a bad rep. I've been seeing these clips floating online around the negative use of EdTech, the negative use of digital platforms supporting learning. And I usually come back to this example. I usually tell people, even the television has negative effect on children. The radio has negative effect on children if these media are not used properly, if they're not administered, not managed, if we do not instill the right morals, the right values, the right ethics, and creating a contained, safeguarded environment for our children to grow and thrive. And we look at technology as the villain here, but perhaps we should also reflect and look at ourselves as parents, as community. What are we doing to actually support, instill the right values, the right morals, the right ethics? Because technology is here to stay, whether we like it or not. Right now, there's probably an algorithm somewhere listening to our conversations on our devices, whether we like it or not. The moment we open our screens, even if you're going to a Bible or a Quran, something is being recorded, whether you like it or not. The moment you make a phone call to another person, you're already transmitting your information, data to another system, and you have no idea where or how many layers are there. And so just as adults, we are able to decide, I am going to open my screen, I'll go on WhatsApp, I'll respond to a message, I'll go on I'll go on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. We're able to decide, we're able to control, we are able to be in command of what we want to access. what we don't want to access. And again, algorithm picks up what we do and to keep on feeding you with what you tend to do often. And so I really, really want us to go back to the basics. Since technology, I look at a smartphone, I look at a laptop, the same way I look at a television set, the same way I look at a radio. And digital platforms, I look at them as the way we have all these soap operas, all these series, telenovelas. That's the way I look at digital platforms, in the sense that the devices are the devices, but then we have content on these devices, on these media. And it's entirely up to us how we choose to control, how we choose to administer these platforms to our students and to our children. And so I believe in the positive use of technology. I also believe in the safe use of technology. So positive use is to actually mobilize, advocate, to have as many appropriate platforms for our children and students, as many as possible. To have, whether it's EdTech solutions, whether it's life skill solutions, whether it's, again, adolescents' reproductive health platforms, whether it's climate change platforms, you name it, so long as they're here to build our children, our students. Those are the positive use of the technology. And then you have the safe use. How are we safeguarding how children, how students are using these platforms, are using these devices? How are we ensuring that they're actually able to access, they're accessing the right platforms at the right time, they're communicating with the right people, they're engaging with the right people via these devices, via these platforms. So the potential use is one thing, but also safeguarding the use is completely another. The same way when you leave a child, let's say with DSTV, and they'll be there watching whatever channel they want. They may even go and watch a movie that is rated 18, and they're actually 8 years old. And so it's the same thing. How are we creating this safeguarded environment? We should not delegate technology to be able to be the mothers and fathers of our children, to be able to be the caregivers of our children. Technology is just a mechanism of different ways of living. It could be a mechanism, again, as I said earlier, of communicating. Technology is a mechanism of being informed. It's a mechanism of being entertained. It's a mechanism of learning and teaching. It still has to be safeguarded. It has to be administered in the right ways with the right guidance.
Thank you. That was very insightful, Faraja. So I think for me, what I've gathered is the fact that it's not so much about the technology and the innovation. It's much more about how it is being used. So now let's have some practical insights from you, Faraja. There are a lot of young persons on this call, and we have like young innovators who might be interested in entering the EdTech field. So what background knowledge or skills do you think are essential to get started? While I was preparing for this webinar, I did some reading on you, and I got to realize that you have a background in law, not even EdTech or anything related to what you are doing currently. So you certainly should have some tips to young innovators who probably do not have an educational background in technology, but then they are looking forward to seeing how they can navigate the EdTech space, and why not create the kind of change that Actually Direct is doing.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you for the background, for the homework that you did. Yes, so I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a programmer, a software developer. I'm not a computer engineer, and I'm also not a teacher. And that is important because, especially in today's world, where what you have studied in school, it is not a prescription. It is not written in stone that is what you have to practice. That is what you have to work for in life. And you can find a person who has studied medicine actually working in, again, an environmental solution, maybe addressing climate change issues. The world is so, how do I put this? The world has become so agile. The world is about skills and not about what your certificate says. So for example, if you look at what is required to start to be a founder of an EdTech enterprise organization, I believe the first thing is actually being willing to learn. having that open mindset to be able to want, to wish, to aspire to acquire new skills. Something which we tend to underestimate how important it is, but it is what will keep a person always in the know of what is going to happen next. When we are looking at our project, the AI teachers, I learned so much about AI. I took a course on AI on several platforms. I took on Moodle. There was one on LinkedIn, just for me to be able to understand the prospects of AI in education. I am constantly learning, but it starts with that growth mindset, with that curiosity, with that appetite to learn. My first degree was, again, a Bachelor of Laws. My second degree was also a Master of Laws. But what I'm doing today is completely different from that. And it's because I constantly aspire to learn. I'm constantly looking for innovative ways and trying to engage people who can take me to the right direction. But the second thing as well, I think with technology and innovation, it's also to be willing to apply what you said earlier, human-centered design approaches, where you can learn from other people. You're able to actually understand that it's always the user who has the knowledge, who has the context of what they need and what they want, and how they can actually support you with the right direction in terms of developing or in terms of designing your solution. And so having that appreciation of users and keeping them at the center of your design, at the center of your solution, always comes back. Again, it comes back handy, and it supports you in creating relevant and contextual solutions. But most importantly, it's learning to collaborate, learning to work with other people, learning to build a team of the right skills. So as much as I am not a computer scientist, I'm not a teacher, but I do work with teachers, I do work with computer scientists, I work with social scientists, researchers, to be able to actually, together with different skill sets, to be able to look at the opportunities and look at the potential solutions, but everyone bringing in their actual niche and their skill set. But what you'd find, and I think you've seen this, Charlotte, even a person may come in Shura Direct as a software developer, but quickly they become, again, social scientists. Quickly, they're able to hold focus group discussions. They're actually able to start and complete a questionnaire that they can actually administer to a key informant person. And so I believe that versatility to be able to adapt new skills, to be able to, you may be labeled as a software developer, but then you're also willing to, perhaps for a day, become a teacher, learn something, facilitate a learning session in a classroom, perhaps observe a teacher, document those observations. You find that it's a fluid of skills. And it is so important in today's world to be able to embrace that flexibility, that agility, because what we need is people who are flexible. We cannot predict how the world will be in 20 years, in 30 years. We can have anticipation. Again, with AI, it's generative. We have no idea how things are going to turn out. So having that open mindset, growth mindset, that flexibility, that agility really helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fawaja. And my next question to you is pretty much in line with this. So, like many a time when we young people,
I think I lost you, Charlotte. I'm not so sure if it's from my end or yours.
AI, the infrastructural limitations that we have in Africa. But you started Shule Direct as a young person, and today Shule Direct is like almost like in the top 10 EdTech organizations in Africa, and why not beyond? So what will you say made you as a young person that you are starting up and in facing those challenges that we know about, what made you what would you say exactly? What components, what skill sets, what mindset made you stay on to this point that it is, and in a way advising young persons that might want or are thinking about getting to the edtech space, but then they are discouraged by the almost seemingly insurmountable challenges that we have.
Yeah, I think it's with any industry. Success comes at a price, and it can be painful at times. But I think the one thing that is very important is to be able to adapt, failure will always happen at some point in the journey, happen or will happen frequently. But I think it's to be able to learn from the failures, pick the lessons very fast. And I think sometimes we tend to wish to change the failures. Once the failure has happened, it has happened. Just learn from it and move on. I mean, it's just, I feel like we usually dwell on the failure, trying to fix things, but sometimes it is what it is. It is a fail. Like, that's it. There is no win there. Pick up your stuff and move on to the next thing. And so I think it's just learning to fail, failing very fast, and to be able to grow some skin, like being resilient in understanding that there's always another opportunity, there's always another lesson, there's always another day, and you can always innovate again. You can always come up with something new. You can always have new solutions, and there is no, I feel like the human brain, and I believe the human brain is an amazing organ. There is no limits to it in terms of how it can think, what it can think, the potential solutions it can come up with. If we really exercise the human brain as a muscle, if we push it, if we keep looking at our communities, at our environment, at our challenges with the eyes that my solution is right within this, it's right through this challenge. This is where I can actually come up with the solution. So resilience is important. Failing fast, taking the lesson, moving on, and growing some skin. You just have to be tough. I mean, I wish there was an easier way. But the last thing that I have to say, and I think it's important, especially for young people, it's we underestimate the value of hard work. I feel like we really want to have these, what I would call microwave solutions. We would want to have microwave results, but it's so important to appreciate that hard work always pays. It may not pay immediately, because again, you'll fail, you'll learn, you'll become resilient, but the effort that you put in never goes in vain. Ultimately, it will pay off. And we cannot skip the process. We cannot try to beat around the process. Some things do not have shortcuts. You just have to go the long way, but you will get there. So long as you're in the right direction and you're moving in that right direction, you will get there. But I feel that we now want to like believe, and we sort of romanticize the idea that work smart, work this, but no, come on, let's just work hard.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Faraja. It just made me remember a quote I saw from Vusi Tembakwayo about the fact that we should not personalize failure. Like, it's part of the process. You did not fail, your solution failed, your project failed, and then you just have to pick yourself up and you move on from there. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really,
You're,
really
you're not your failure. Yeah, I love that. I love that quote, actually. You're not your failure. Your failure is just, it's an extension, it's something else. There is you still. You still have you.
Exactly. So let's just move a little bit forward to, let's have a view into the future. I know you have just said that we cannot really tell, we cannot predict the future. We can only anticipate. However, working in the space you're working in, you should have certain indicators that are indicative of what future we have with regards to EdTech and AI. So my question to you, Faraja, is like, how do you see AI shaping the future of education in sub-Saharan Africa, like over, let's say, the next decade? And like, just in terms of opportunities, in terms of transformative impact that education or AI systems or AI can have on like our educational systems and things like that. What do you make of this?
So I feel like AI is one of the things that is really, it's coming at a point where anybody can have access to it, and anybody can leverage it and can make it smarter. I love generative AI in the sense that it's able to address our needs. It's able to respond to what we want it to do, and it does this remotely, automatically. It's just like it, we have to command it, but again, it takes a life of its own. Artificial intelligence is able to support I would call our native learning journeys. And what I mean by that it's because when EdTech was coming in, you find that digital platforms, some of them are very advanced and they're coming in from different countries. You'd have examples from India, you'd have examples from Finland. The best EdTech platforms were from the US, from all these first world countries. And it was really hard to be able to find something that we can emulate, that can be integrated in our context, because they were very advanced. They required a different set of digital skills. They required different behaviors, and they were coming in with that assumption that the fundamentals, the underlying systemic issues are sorted. Like a school doesn't need to have a latrine. It's already there. But we're battling fundamental issues, systemic issues in our education system. And the platforms, the technologies that were coming in were not cognizant of that. It just assumed that everything is done, everything is settled. Now, this is the next layer of what needs to be integrated into the education system. Now, artificial intelligence, it's coming in, meeting us exactly where we are. It doesn't meet us at a point where everything else is done. When you're using artificial intelligence today, if you're integrating it into your platform, it will start exactly where you are. It will not start from the skill set of a student in Finland, in Helsinki. It will start from the understanding, the literacy level, the capacity of a student in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, of a student in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, of a student in, again, Gaborone, anywhere in Africa. And that is the most important thing. It will start exactly from that point. But also, it will start at an individual level. It will not be based on a school. It will not be based on a community. It will not be based on a classroom. When we were building the first platforms for Sure Direct, the first web platform, everything, of course, we have analytics, but these analytics were pretty much grouped. They were really, you'd have, again, if you look at, let's say, Google Analytics, even when you customize them, so I'm talking about 10 years ago, even when you customize the Google Analytics, they will still have your data in cohorts. They will still sort of aggregate your data in a way that you have samples, you have groups, you have cohorts of data. Now, I can actually tell you exactly how Charlotte would gazes at our web platform. When she clicks on our web platform, when she lands on the landing page, where did she first look? Like it's almost like a learning companion that goes with you, that is able to come back and give you feedback, that is able to support you on what you should do next. And that is important, because then my experience will be different from your experience. And it's important because we are different as human beings. My learning journey cannot be the same as yours. My learning capacity, my learning difficulties, my learning needs, it could be that we're in the same classroom the same day. We went maybe for a mathematics session. We came out of it. You understood very well. Perhaps I was hungry. I did not understand. I was dozing off. I did not understand. And I'm able to go to even if we log into the platform at the same time, your experience will be different from mine, because I'll be starting off from where I was or what I need to learn. So artificial intelligence is able to actually grow with us. So that is the current baseline. Now, what do we do with that? We are able to now develop platforms that are relevant, that are contextual to our needs, both on teacher side, but also on the student side. But most importantly, government systems, whether it's policies, whether it's strategies, whether it's the actual actions, infrastructure, systemic issues that need to be addressed, can actually be done with the right data, with the right approaches, because everything is supposed to be relevant and contextual to a particular setting, whether it's a student, it's a school, it's a community. So I look at it in layers, and I believe it's enabling us to now become innovators, better innovators. It's enabling us to devise solutions that actually work for us, not imported solutions, not inspired by what is happening elsewhere, but things which can actually work for us.
Well, I honestly love how nuanced you've been with your response, because indeed we cannot have a holistic overview of where AI is going to be in the next couple of years. The various contexts we find ourselves in really go a long way to determine like the starting point, the ending point, the opportunities that come in. And I think this makes me think of this statesman, Julius Nyerere, he once said that we have to define what development means to us. If the US, for example, is sending astronauts to Mars, that's development to them. If we have our children having access to potable water in the village, that is development to us. So whatever steps that come in definitely have to do with where we are currently and our context. So yeah, I think it's a question that doesn't really have a one size fits it all response, but I love
Yes.
how you were very nuanced in breaking the various compartments that come with that.
And thank you for
So
the quote from our founding father.
yeah, of course, of course. So, Faraja, my next question to you is, this is around your leadership skills, having to lead Shule Direct to where it is today. That definitely shows that you have immense leadership skill and capacity. So, what I just want to know is, what would you say is the hardest leadership decision you've had to make as a founder in the EdTech space, and how does this decision shape you, or how has it shaped you? If it's something recent or something in the past, that you can just share.
Wow. I'll have to think. The biggest leadership decision, I would say,
Hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
yes, yeah. I'm trying so hard to think one. I think I would say being disappointed and to be able to work, how do I put this? So I don't know if it's a leadership decision, it was a test. When you're doing something new, when you're doing something that's like almost trying to create a pathway where there was no path, like it's not been done before. And you'd have people who may not believe, people who may not say nice things to you or about your innovation, but to still be able to work with them, to still be able to consider them as partners, to still be able to continue convincing, continue demonstrating, and continue trying to make them understand what it means, understand the prospects of EdTech, understanding the prospects of innovation. And it's a constant test, because it's almost like you're meeting your enemy every day and you still have to face and smile, because yeah, they don't like what you're doing, but then you still have to find a way of working with them. I think that is very hard, because it comes back to it's like a human test. It tests your character, it tests your personality, it tests your patience as well. And so it's hard. And if I may say a decision, I also think letting go of people is always hard as you're building a team, as you're building an organization. It comes down to the principles, it comes down to the values. And if a person, however close, or perhaps however much you like them, if they're not really adhering to those principles or those values, and you have to let them go, it's never a pleasant thing. And I think it shakes you as a human being. And as women, we are very compassionate. And so sometimes we always find ourselves in this battle, whether you take a personal route or you take a professional route. And of course, we always have to take the professional route, as much as we come from a place of compassion, a place of empathy, but the fundamental principles and values will still have to hold court. And so it's always hard to part ways with people.
Okay, thank you for that response, Faraja. And I just had to ask this question. So, like, giving you a very powerful brand identity online, like IG, Twitter, you have like over 2 million plus followers across your various social media handles. So how important is it to have a personal brand in this digital age, especially for, an emerging professional? And what are some cues you have or you can give for an emerging professional who wants to get started? Because I see you share a lot of your work on your social media platform. You do a lot of influencing. With regards to the work that you're doing at Shule Direct and on other platforms where you're creating meaningful change.
Thank you. And I love how I love how you said it in the beginning, because it felt like I had planned for I had a strategy. No, I did not have a strategy. But I like one thing that I saw early on. And again, it came as a result of us bootstrapping. So it wasn't really it wasn't like a preconceived notion that, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is our strategy. So we did not have budgets for marketing, for promotion. And as a founder, you always have that responsibility to be the spokesperson of your organization, of your enterprise, of your company. And so I had to be the one speaking. And so I had to be very creative. I had to, maybe this would be my strategy. I had to have Faraja as a human being who is trying to do something innovative. So what does it mean? I think what we usually find is that you'd have a person showcasing or putting themselves out there as a professional person. I believe I am a human first, then I'm all these other things. And so if you look at I think my social media, all different handles, I always try to bring myself as a person and then to show all these facets of who I am as a person, whether as a mother, as an innovator, as a CEO. It's just to be able to show that it's not rocket science, and people resonate with people who they feel like they can become, people who they feel like it's not really like, it's not like I've invented like the cancer medicine. It's just, again, it's just technologies, digital platforms. I don't know what I'm going to innovate next, or what I'm going to create next. And so I think the most important thing, which I would say as a tip, take people on a journey with you. And we want to come to people when everything is done, like, oh, this is it, this is my success, this is done. But people don't relate to that. I feel like people relate to a journey, they relate to a person, and they relate to your stories. And we're all stories. If you're all stories, then stories has chapters. You don't just take us to the 20th chapter. We have no idea what happened in the second chapter. Like, we don't know. Did you get on a bus? Did you walk? Did you get on a plane? Like, how did you get to the 20th chapter? And I feel we miss a lot of that bond, that connection that we can have with other people by trying to have a picture perfect 20th chapter reveal and not involving people in your first, second, third, fourth chapter, where they can actually have lessons, where it's a place where they can actually learn from you, they can get insights. And yeah, I feel people respond to that. And I would say that's the best thing that I've done, if I may have one best thing in my social media handling.
Oh, lovely. I've taken down notes. Thank you for the free masterclass on boosting our social media
Of course,
handles.
be authentic. The other thing is just be authentic. I mean, just be you. Yes, we live in a world where everything's like glossy and filtered and it's nice, but authenticity never dies. Authenticity is like, there's nothing wrong with authenticity, because it's just who you are. There's nothing right or wrong. It's just you. So it's fine. We can always put ourselves out there authentically us.
Right. Thank you, Faraja. We have a few minutes for questions. I don't know if you have any questions, just kindly drop in the chat. I think we have one question here. So Faraja, this is one question for you from audience. I think you've touched on this, but perhaps person might want, a more engaging response. So the question is understanding the challenges that are seen in this technology. What are the measures put in place to ensure sustainability? So I don't know if you got the question.
I did. I'm just trying to wonder, was it AI or is it our digital platforms? But I can respond, I can just respond generally. So I'm assuming that sustainability in the perspective of users, or ensuring that they last. And my general response would be that so long as you're responding to people's needs, wants, you'll always be sustainable. I think what we usually see, and I can cite so many examples. So for example, remember Nokia, right? Nokia was like the first smartphone, like the first feature phone that became a smartphone, and they were the pioneers. And today we have iPhones, we have Samsungs, we have other types of smartphones which were not really the front runners, not the pioneers, not the trailblazers in the smartphone, in the mobile industry, the mobile technologies industry. And if we ask ourselves, where did they go wrong? It happened at a point where change was happening. There was a lot of user feedback that I think was being sent their way, or that they were seeing or they were perceiving, but they were not acting on it. What really happened, people started wanting to have perhaps better control of their smartphones. They wanted to have a smartphone as an accessory, not just as a tool. People wanted to have more things, like they wanted to have a life with their smartphones, with their devices, and not just as a communication tool. They were looking at a smartphone as a lifestyle tool, as a lifestyle device. These things, I'm sure, were being evident, and Nokia perhaps saw them, but did they respond to the changing needs of their market? Maybe not. Or if they did, they responded too late. And so the number one way to be sustainable, I believe, is to always be user-centric or customer-centric, to always respond to your users, to always respond to your clients, respond to your customers. And here comes another thing that I usually feel like we also miss is understanding who is your customer. So sometimes, I'll give an example. When we go into a school, we categorize our customers. We understand that the customer is the owner of the school, who could be the government, or it could be a private school owned. It could be a private school ownership. We understand that's a different category for customers. So the way we address their needs to be very different to the way we'll address the teacher's needs. The teacher would want to have a platform that can support them to teach better, that can support them to perhaps reduce their workload, to be able to support their students. And the student, who is also our customer, will have a completely different set of needs. And so we usually think of, okay, I can just have one solution, and for me to be sustainable, this is my value proposition, and this is what I'm selling to everyone, and everyone will actually just respond to the same thing. But sometimes we have to customize our value proposition based on our different customers. And so to always be aware, to always monitor, to always evaluate, to always learn from the customers, being user-centric, being adopting and integrating and leaving human-centered design approaches will ensure sustainability.
Thank you, Faraja. I think you've done justice to that question. I think we have time for a last question here. So someone is asking that how inclusive are your platforms? In terms of persons living with disability, how are they integrated or considered?
Thank you. So what we've been trying to do, and again, inclusive education is very dear to our heart. We actually have a whole thematic area focused on equitable and inclusive education. And the first thing that we're really looking at is how accessible our platform. So what we did, we integrated accessibility features on our platforms to be able to support students with at least hearing needs, to be able to support students with different learning needs. And we're trying to now integrate our platform with assistive devices when we go into schools. So having like digital brailles, also integrating our platform with the physical brailles to be able to actually support students in schools with visual impairments to be able to learn with the braille support in schools. So the first thing we did, of course, was through our own digital platforms, having accessibility features. But now we are really looking at how best we can support inclusive schools with assistive devices integrated with our platforms. But we also work with special needs teachers to be able to support them to learn how to teach using technology, because we've seen that technology is actually able to, one of the results that we've seen, the impact reports in so many different countries, is how EdTech is able to support students with different disabilities. And so we believe the channel or the best approach would be to support special needs teachers who then can support their students with our platforms to be able to learn on our platforms.
Thank you so much, Faraja. I think we are out of time, and hopefully, since we are partners. Hopefully some of these questions that we have here, we can always follow up with you later on to see how we can get some responses to them, because we're running out of time. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to probably give your last remarks. But before doing that, let us know what interest or hobby do you have that might surprise people?
What, sorry?
What interest or hobby do you have that might surprise people?
Oh, okay. I like cooking. I don't know if it's to be a surprise or not. I also, okay, that maybe not a surprise given we're in Africa, but the partnership we have, Africa, I appreciate Patrick's leadership. I think he has a formidable team. I really appreciate the vision you have when it comes to data and evidence-based approaches in Africa. I know our pilot project is just the beginning of a very productive and a very resourceful partnership going forward. And I look forward to change, transform, and revolutionize education in Africa through the power of technology. And I welcome everyone on this call who is able to join us on this journey to engage with me directly or engage with any member of SureDirect team, but also with eBase. And let's look at how we can work together to leverage technology to improve learning outcomes in Africa. Thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much, Faraja. You've been so kind. I think this was really an insightful one. You're literally a well of knowledge. So thank you for taking all the time to dishing out the well of knowledge that you have within you. So that said, I don't know if we have Andrea on board or Julius, if there are any announcements for upcoming webinars.
Okay, thank you very much, Faraja, for coming, and thank you for giving us this wonderful presentation. And thank you to Charlotte for moderating. And I must say it was a wonderful session, and we all learned, and we are thankful. So nothing again. I think we've come to the end of webinars in prelude to the education in Daba. That's going to be happening in Limbe from the 31st of March to the 2nd of April 2025. And I think we've had what we wanted, and yes, thank you, Faraja, and we stay in touch and we are together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying to the end. And